Born the illegitimate son of an Irish lord, Charles P Stanton began his life of crime while living in England's Monmouth Monastery. While studying to be a priest, he was caught stealing the monastery's silver. He escaped punishment and left on a ship bound for America, ending up in California. Well, Stanton arrived at Antelope stage station in the 1870s, then a rough, tough, booming mining town in Arizona. Antelope Station had been a stagecoach stop between towns, but when gold was discovered, the town grew to 3,500 people practically overnight. The town and the fortune in the ground around it attracted villains, crooks, con men, and parasites that made Deadwood look respectable. Stanton's first act of dishonesty in this town happened soon after arriving, when he swindled a gold claim from a miner. He then opened a general store selling anything and everything to the thriving mining town. He ran a competitor named Martin out of town, and as the poor man with his wife and the 2 young sons were on the road, he had a gang of Mexican cutthroats called the Vega Gang cut their throats, scalp them, and throw their bodies in the back of the wagon before setting it alight. Stanton had watched the gruesome massacre from a nearby hill. He wanted the blame placed on the Indians in the area. He also opened a post office in the store, and the office was named after him. Eventually, the whole town became known as Stanton. Chuck Stanton soon had his gang of villains killing anyone who he thought he could make a dollar from. The town got such a reputation for murder and thuggery that travelers bypassed it when they could. If a miner came to the town to find his fortune, he would most likely be spending his money or gold with one or all of Stanton's businesses, from mining and camping supplies, lodging, alcohol, and women. Stanton ran it all. Ironically, he even acted as the deputy and justice of the peace when needed. Chuck Stanton's life as a crime boss started to unwind when one day in 1886, out on the street, he propositioned a beautiful young Mexican girl named Friolana Lucero. When she refused, he hurled disgusting insults at her and her father, who had come out of the store. Well, Stanton yelled at the old man about all the deviant acts he would subject his daughter to whenever he liked. Days later, as the sun was settling, Stanton was in his shop counting the till. 3 Mexican men strolled in with their hats pulled low, and as soon as Stanton looked up, he knew they were trouble. As he went to put the money back in the till, the 3 men raised their shotguns and blasted the villain off his stool. Although well and truly dead, one of the Mexicans walked up to the bloody pulp of Stanton's head and shot him again at point-blank range. That man was Pete Lucero, Friolana's brother. No one mourned the loss of Stanton, except perhaps the Vega Gang. By 1905, the gold had all gone, and the town was abandoned just as quickly as it was built. It sat as a ghost town for decades until the 1960s, when hippies moved into the town. Today, it's an RV park and a historical site. A half-century ago, the vast region beyond the Rocky Mountains was comparatively unknown and unexplored. Its general features, of course, were understood, but the interior was like the central portion of Australia or Africa. Now, Lewis and Clark made their famous expedition to Oregon during the early days of the century and helped to turn general attention in that direction. Its growth and development since then is one of the wonders of the age. But there was one class, if the word can even be used, who never hesitated to penetrate the wildest and most dangerous recesses of the far west and northwest. Those were the hunters and the trappers. The employees of the venerable and all-embracing Hudson Bay Company ranged over British America and through Oregon, to which vast territory they possessed the clear legal right, besides which they and the trappers of the American Fur Company frequently trespassed on each other's reserves, and not infrequently came in bloody collision with each other. Far to the northward, the Indian drove his birch canoe across the silent Athabasca and Great Bear Lakes on his way with his peltries to the distant factory or post of the company. Along the frozen shores of the lone Mackenzie, the only American river flowing into the Arctic Ocean, the trapper glided on his snowshoes or with his sturdy dogs and sleigh and fought his way over the snowy wastes of Prince Rupert's Land. The brigades in their boats rounded the curves of the Saskatchewan, keeping time with their paddles to their own cheery songs. Their campfires were kindled in the land of the Assiniboine, and they set their traps in the wildest recesses of the Rocky Mountains, where the whirling snowstorms almost carried them off their feet. But north of the dividing line, the hunters had little, if anything, to fear from the red men. Though they had encounters in the loneliest and most desolate distant regions, they generally met and separated as friends. Among the perils of the trapper's life in British America was not reckoned that from the hostile natives. It was far different within our own territory, however. Those who left our frontier states and pushed westward, and those who penetrated northward and eastward from the Mexican country, knew that they were invading the hunting grounds of the fiercest Indians on the American continent. We've already told enough to show the intense hostility of the red men. Between them and the hunters and trappers raged a war that never ceased or slackened, except when policy held it for a time in check. The little group of horsemen who rode out from Independence or Westport, or who took steamer at St. Louis up the Missouri, often came back with several of their number missing. Up among the mountains, they had gone out to visit their traps and had never come back to camp. The lurking Blackfoot or Sioux or Crow had aimed all too well, and as he bounded whooping away, he swung aloft the scalp of his victim whose trapping days were ended forever. Edward Ellis.